Near the end of the series, a man walks into a state psychiatric facility to visit his uncle. The old man doesn't know him, so the nephew tries the only thing he has left. He tells him who he used to be. He says that his uncle and his father ran North Jersey. He says it plainly, as a gift, the way you'd hand someone their own wallet back. And the old man considers this information about his own life. The decades of it, the men who feared him, the trials, the wars, the entire accumulated weight of everything he did and everything it cost. And he says, that's nice. Then the nephew leaves, and the old man goes back to his chair. I don't think there is a more frightening 2 minutes anywhere in television, and I want to talk about why. Because the terror in that scene has nothing to do with organized crime and everything to do with a thing that is currently happening to about 55 million people. Start with who was Corrado Soprano. Because the disease chose him with a kind of malice. Junior's entire operating system was status, not money. He was famously cheap and lived modestly, not violence for its own sake. What Junior wanted, across 70-some years, was to be acknowledged. He kept an exact ledger of precedents, who had shown him respect, who had failed to, who had been given something that should have been his. He remembered slights from the 50s with total clarity. When he was humiliated in a private matter and the crew found out, he ended a good relationship rather than tolerate being laughed at. That's the man. He was made almost entirely out of memory. Grievances, hierarchies, and a very long list of who owed him what. So when the show gives him dementia, it isn't just taking his mind. It's taking the specific organ he built his whole self on. The ledger is the man. Erase the ledger, and there's no one left to be respected. Now, the part that makes this arc so much harder than a straightforward decline. For years, nobody can tell whether it's real. Junior is on trial. It goes on, and at some point the legal strategy turns toward his mental condition. The idea that a man too confused to follow proceedings can't be tried. His confusion becomes useful. It acquires a purpose, and Junior, a proud man, is degraded by the very suggestion, and resists it, and then complies with it, and then somewhere in there stops needing to act. The performance and the condition converge. And no one can locate the seam, not his lawyers, not Tony, not, in the end, Junior himself. If you have had a difficult, manipulative parent or relative start to decline, you know this problem intimately, and you know that nobody outside the family understands it, because the diagnosis doesn't settle anything. The forgetting is real, and the manipulation is also real, and they don't take turns politely. A man who has spent 50 years using confusion, charm, wounded pride, and selective recall as tools does not stop using them when he actually gets ill. He uses them worse, with less control, and now you can't call him on any of it without being the person who accused a sick old man of faking. So, the family ends up in permanent arbitration with no evidence, and every ruling they make is cruel in one direction or the other. And then the show does the thing that turns all of that theory into a gunshot. Junior, alone, confused, in his own kitchen, becomes convinced that a man from decades ago, an enemy long dead, from a war long over, is in his house. He gets a gun. He shoots his nephew in the stomach and leaves him bleeding on the floor. Look at the mechanics of that, because they're medically exact. He is not violent because he is angry at Tony. He is not confused about whether shooting people is wrong. He has simply been relocated. The past has not faded. It has overwritten the present, completely and convincingly, and inside the world he is actually living in. His response is entirely rational. That's what families are never prepared for. The danger is genuine and the intent is absent. There is no one to be angry at. You cannot prosecute a man for a decision made in 1972, and you also cannot leave him in a house with a stove and a car and a firearm, which means the next thing that has to happen is the thing everyone has been avoiding. He goes into an institution. He does not come out. Now we get to the actual subject, which is the intervals. There's a stretch where his medication is adjusted, and he improves. He gets better. He becomes more present, more coherent, more himself. And this is the moment people who haven't lived it always misread, because it sounds like relief. It isn't. Lucidity is not a break from the illness. Lucidity is the part where he can see it. A confused junior does not know he's in a state facility. A lucid junior knows exactly where he is, how he got there, what he did to his nephew. And this is the unbearable part, that the fog is going to come back, because it always comes back. Every good day includes the knowledge that it's temporary. He gets his mind returned to him, just long enough to take inventory of what's missing, and to understand that no one is coming to take him home. That's why the clear intervals are worse. Not because they're rare, because they're the only moments in which the loss is fully available to the person losing it. And they do something equally corrosive on the other side of the bed. Every family managing this describes the same cycle, and nobody warns you about it. He has a good afternoon. He's sharp. He makes a joke that's genuinely funny, the specific kind only he makes. And for 20 minutes, he is entirely, unmistakably there. And you drive home thinking, maybe we were too quick. Maybe the facility was wrong. Maybe with the right medication, the right routine, the right effort from us, maybe he comes back. The next visit, he calls you by your dead brother's name. Ordinary grief, whatever else is wrong with it, moves in one direction. This doesn't. It resets. Every lucid interval restores the hope, and the hope has to be extinguished again. And you can be to do this 30 or 40 times over a period of years. Families don't break down over the bad days. They break down over the good ones. Which brings me to the most extraordinary thing about Junior's institutionalization, and the one detail that lifts this above misery. He starts running the place. Inside a locked ward, stripped of his money, his family, his reputation, and most of his memory, Junior organizes a card game and begins skimming from it. He identifies the useful people. He acquires a young protege who idolizes him. And then, exactly as he did across his whole career, he humiliates the protege, and it ends badly, and it ends badly, in the same way it always ended badly. That's not a joke about mobsters. That's the most hopeful and most disturbing fact about this disease at once. Personality outlives memory. The facts go first, the person. The shape of them, the way they move through a room, what they reach for, persists long after they can tell you where they live. Which means the man in that chair is not gone, and is also not retrievable. And both of those are true at the same time for years. Now the objection people always raise, and it deserves a real answer. Isn't it a mercy? He isn't suffering. He doesn't know what he's lost. Surely the pain here belongs entirely to the family. And for him it's a kind of gentle exit, partly. But look again at where the mercy actually applies. It applies only during the fog, and the fog is intermittent, which is the whole argument. The comfort of not knowing is available to him maybe half the time on a schedule nobody controls, punctuated by episodes of complete clarity in a locked building. And there's something the mercy framing misses entirely. There is a category of loss that isn't suffering. Junior is not in pain in that final scene. He is not frightened. He is perfectly calm. He has simply been separated from the meaning of his own life while still being alive to hold it. Everything he did, every choice, every betrayal, every decade of climbing, was justified, in his own accounting, by what it added up to, and the sum is stored in exactly one place. It isn't in a building, or a record, or a reputation that outlives him. It's in his head, and it's not backed up, and it's going. That's the thing that should frighten a viewer who has never seen a minute of this show. Not the ward, not the gun. The realization that whatever you're currently building, the career, the reputation, the thing you're known for, the private ledger of what you've withstood and what you're owed, is being stored in tissue, and that the storage is not guaranteed, and that if it fails, you will still be sitting there afterward. There is one more piece, and it's the quietest indictment in the whole arc. Nobody takes him home. For years, the actual labor of Junior's care was done by Bobby. The wheelchair, the errands, the abuse absorbed without complaint. All of it unpaid and unremarked. And when it becomes too much, when the shooting makes the situation impossible, the family that Junior spent his life fighting for, and fighting with places him with the state, and visits and leaves. Tony is not a monster for this. There's no version where Junior comes to live in that house. But the show is very careful to show you the arithmetic. A man builds an entire life on a family, on the idea that the family is the thing that survives you and looks after its own. And at the end, the family is a nephew who drops in, tries to hand him his own biography, and gets told, that's nice. He isn't being cruel when he says it. That's what makes it land. He's being polite to a stranger who's brought him a piece of pleasant news about somebody else.